So we have a new toy here at Georgia's Smoky Mountain RC, the CR10 V3 3D printer. It's pretty obvious why we need a 3D printer for an RC hobby, because there's a lot of times you need to do repairs or you just want to make something from a scratch build, and this opens up a whole lot of options. So today we're going to do an unboxing and assembly of the CR10 V3 3D printer from Creality. .3D printer user manual. Box of parts, some flash drives, power cord, some tools, and I assume this is going to be what we use when we want to pry the material loose after we've done a print. Here's all the assembly hardware to hold the spoils, feeder, I give a good little starter roll of white PLA 1.75 millimeter. PLA is the plastic that's melted to actually make the model. There's the support poles, 4 of those. Okay, so I'm going to leave this in the foam for right now until I'm ready to start putting that together. And the last piece is the power supply and screen, the control system. Okay, we are now unboxed. So the next step will be starting the assembly. For step 1 of the assembly, I have the base standing up. This is the back of the table. And then I have the print head facing forward, and this is going to bolt onto the base. Now there's a little bag that says on here M5 25 thread, has 4 bolts in there. I'm going to take those 4 bolts out. We're going to use those to go up from the bottom of the base to bolt in the print head, the whole print head stand here. Fortunately, they give you the tools you need for everything, including even the wire cutters, so that's pretty nice. I'm going to go ahead and move the print head up a little bit. So do the initial tightening with the long end, using the short end for torque, because you don't want to strip any of the threads. And make sure everything goes in fully smooth until you get down to just the last turn or two. Then switch to the other end and really tighten down. Get these nice and firm. You don't want them loose. Have things moving on you between prints. This is kind of the most awkward part of putting this together. After this part is done, the rest of it's not nearly as awkward as having to turn the whole base up one end. Just don't over tighten so much that you strip it out either. So, okay, let's turn this around, looking from front to back. And there we go. Step one is completed. Step two, we're going to start working on the, what they call the pull rods to help stabilize the top of the unit. So you're going to find a bag that has 4 eyelets in it and 4 bolts, nuts I should say, and you want to thread those nuts on about maybe 3/4 of the way, a little less than that, maybe 2/3 of the way up the shank of each one of these to get them ready. That leaves you with 2 straight bolts. Does not have a head on either side, and what you want to do is screw this about halfway in to one piece. The end goal is you kind of want about half and half, one in each piece, because you're just going to hook the pieces together. So I'm going to back mine out just a little bit, kind of hold it in place so I can get the other side started without it turning and spinning. And then just screw them together tightly. Okay, do the exact same thing for the next 2. I'm screwing mine not quite halfway in, holding it with my fingertip and screwing on the other side. Keep the bolt from moving. And they're just screwing it the rest of the way together. Okay, just make sure they're torqued tight. Then what you want to do is take one of these eyelets, screw one into each side. Now these will have to be adjusted once this is applied to the unit. So just kind of get them kind of loosely on there, and we'll tighten this nut up and adjust it in a minute. Just do that for both sides of each one of these. A lot of interesting things that we can print with this. Have a scratch build for a new RC. It's not really a plane, but it does levitate off the ground. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see how I use this to print a few items that will help me to do a scratch build. And I will be publishing that video down the road in a little bit. Okay, so the next thing we need to do, there's a bag. It has 4 screws and 4 long standoffs, just hollow metal standoffs, little tubes basically. And we're going to take 2 of these, and it looks like they are going to screw right into the side of the unit. So there's a hole right here. And a hole on the other side. Now, before we do that, let's see. Looks like we actually want to go through the eyelet first, then through the standoff, if I'm understanding this correctly. And then that's going to screw into the side of the unit. And we're going to do the same thing for the other end. Screw, eyelet. Don't tighten it all down yet, just kind of get it started. Try to hand tighten nuts first as best as you can, as to not to take a chance of stripping any of the threads. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is create the points using these little right angle brackets in their own bag. So we want to take those out, and there should be another bag that has 4 screws and 4 little kind of rectangular bolts that are going to go into a groove up here and then turn sideways, and that's how they catch. And we're going to hold these 2 mounts on with those. So 2 screws on the end. Then I guess go ahead and start the screws with the little indented area closer to the right angle bracket for both of these. Kind of see how these sit on there. And that's going to go set inside here. And it looks like the bracket arm is going to line up right with the edge. That's what it looks like it's doing here. So line that up right with the edge. And then I think it's the smaller Allen key. Hopefully these should just turn on their own and lock into place. Shouldn't have to do anything special to get them to turn and lock. Just start tightening, and you should just feel it get stiff and hard that it's catching. Yep, definitely feels hard to turn. So just tighten those both up and duplicate that on the other side. Again, lining up right with the edge. Once you do that, we'll take this piece. Now is where we need to, I want to kind of equally adjust these until it matches up with the hole here. A few more turns there. A few more turns on that side. And it's almost there. Looks like that's about got it. And once it's on there, you can always turn this a little bit to kind of tighten it in. Okay, so this piece looks like the screw comes in from this side. No, it can't. Goes in from this side, then the spacer, and bolts in like so. Using longer Allen, nope, it's a smaller Allen key. I'll screw that in tight. So tighten this end in, tighten this end, the bottom end. Nice and tight. And slightly turn this till it just feels taut. And we know the distance is just the way it needs to be. Then we're going to put the lock washers. We're going to turn these nuts down to act as lock washers. And there's a little tool they've given us here for that. And we're just going to tighten these down to stop this tube from turning. And we're just going to duplicate this on the other side. So for the next step, there's two different metal pieces, and they should already have the little nuts and bolts already assembled on them, and they need to be unscrewed to where they're kind of just near the end on both pieces. And these are going to go about 1/4 of the way in on the top, with the little flange facing back towards where the stepper motor section is, away from the front. So the first one is going to sit here, about 1/4 of the way over. We want to bolt this in. Again, the nuts should turn sideways, locking them in place once we start tightening it up. Now, these are not cooperating as well. There it goes. Okay, so this one is the little unit that the PLA or whatever material you're using, that material will run through this, and it acts as a switch to know that your material is still valid. What happens is if you get to the end of a roll or end of a spool and run out of material, this will tell the unit, hey, stop, you're out of material. So you can either splice in another piece or restart your print. Okay, so that piece is in. It's not perfectly straight on the front. I want to make sure this is nice and straight across the front. There, it's better. Now, exact same thing with the other piece. The little flange facing towards the back. And again, somewhere approximately right about 1/4 of the way in. So this is a different Allen key. And this is going to hold the material. It's interesting, that does not lock down. Here it goes. It just needs a good little bit of tightening to lock this piece down solid. Okay, and that again, nice and lined with the front. It's in there really good and solid. Now what we want to do at that point is add this last piece, which is the piece that holds the material on. And that's going to come in from the back and sit like this. And then we just use this piece to lock it in. And there it is, nice and solid. And that's what our PLA spools will hang on as they then come up and feed into the feeder, down through the feeder, and then down into the print head. So that is the end of step 3. Now for step 4, we need a little panel It needs to be bolted in. So open the bag that has the little adapter so you can read the SD card over USB that they supply. Here's another piece that has two little pieces that go on the end of this front piece, which I didn't put in, so I'm going to have to remove those to put those in. And then here is the little panel. This is a little switch panel. It looks like they, unless this goes somewhere else, they might have given us a spare for this little switch panel. Looks like it's a stop switch. And that looks like it's made to bolt in. Like right here. There's two bolts right here in this bag for that. There's also two nozzles. Keep those in the bag. And then these two pieces should insert right in here into the side with two screws. This looks like this is the stop switch for when the print head comes down to have a mechanical stop in case it goes too far. It has a little socket on the inside. This looks like that's going to be a little hard to get to plug that in. We'll see when we get to that step. So that is bolted in. Now I do need to fix this. I went ahead and put this piece on, and I did not put the little end caps that have a hole in the middle, made for this to go through, so it doesn't have exposed material on the frame. I'm assuming you don't need these at all, but they're more an aesthetic feature, and I'm going to go ahead and install them. So I'm going to take this back off, stick this little piece on, and screw this back in, and repeat that on the other side. So now we're going to hook up all of the connections to the stepper motors. So this one comes from inside. It says Z on it, the Z axis. And we're going to plug that one in. Exact same thing over here on the other side. Comes in from over here. Also has a Z on the little label. And then that one plugs in same way. Okay. Then we have the Z limit switch that we added a little bit ago, and we're going to plug this one in. And it needs to plug in like so. This one's a little hard, a little tricky plug in. It might have been easier to plug this in before bolting it to the side of the unit. Would have been nice if that was one of the steps. Okay, finally got it in. Okay, now I'm going to move the unit, so I'm not going to plug in the rest of the connections, but you have a barrel connector. It's going to connect in the back of the unit. And then this piece right here, which will connect right here in the bottom side. And then we have this, which will plug in right here on the actual print head. It'll plug in right up here. But I'm not going to plug those in yet because I'm going to move this whole unit. So the last wire we need to hook up is an extension that plugs right on here. Little extension wire here. It comes with all the materials. And snap that together. And then the other end of that will go here and the side of the feeder, like so. And that just is going to plug right in there. So now that I have the printer set up where I'm going to be using it and the table nice and level, I'm going to go and level the bed. So first thing I'm going to do is come back here and hit the power switch. Powering up for the first time. Okay, then what we want to do for the bed leveling is we need to go into the menu and do Prepare Auto Home. So you need to find the menu that says Auto Home. Okay, so we go Prepare, push in the knob, Auto Home, and let's see what happens when we do Auto Home. It's going down very slowly. Definitely taking its time getting down. Okay, and we're just about down. Assume it's going to hit the Z switch. Yep, it did. Just hit the Z switch. Okay. It says that the nozzle should move to the left front of the platform. This is the left and this is the front. So it is now in the home position. So now what we want to do is we want to disable the steppers so that we can level the bed. So we go down to, let's see, go to Prepare. So we go back into the Prepare menu. We want to do Disable Steppers. Click that one. I did that, but I don't know if it's working or not. It didn't give me any indication. Let's see if the bed moves freely. I guess it does move freely. Okay, let's see if the print head moves. Okay, it does appear to move. Okay, so the next step is to level. Okay, so with the steppers disabled in the first corner here, I'm going to put a piece of paper underneath the unit, right where the print head is, and I'm going to turn the screw, and it's had to turn it quite a bit. We want to turn it until the paper stops moving freely. You don't want to tighten it down too much, so you want to go just enough to where the paper stops. And I guess doing this the very first time takes quite a few turns. This bed can move quite a distance when leveling. And now I have it to where the screw is just loose and it's not getting, this is not leveling. There's too much of a distance here, so something's not right. Yeah, so something's not right here. So what I had to do is loosen and retighten the Z-axis limit switch that was added in an earlier step. I had to loosen that and move it down a little bit to get it to where I could finally change the adjustment wheel underneath to where it would get tight enough to hold the piece of paper in place. So you want to tighten it down to where the paper kind of stops moving, and then loosen it back up until it kind of feels scratchy, so it kind of holds in place. Then when you've done one corner, you want to go over to the next. And you want to do the same thing. So it's just getting tight there. A little more. It feels pretty tight right there. So loosen just a hair. All right, that feels about right. You want to go around through all four corners and do this multiple times. The more you do it, the better the table will be leveled. Yeah, it's a little tight back here, so I'm going to bring the table down some more. Okay, so again, get to where it just starts to catch, to where it doesn't want to move, and then loosen it up just a little, not a little too much. And feel just to where it feels good resistance on the paper. And then move to the next corner the same way. Okay, so I got it just where it feels snug. So I'm going to go through and finish that process multiple times on all four corners. Just, again, tightening it to where just where the paper stops, loosening it up to where it can move with some resistance. And if I do it about the same in all four corners, then we should be leveled. Just make sure you remember to say disable steppers before you start pushing things around by hand. So once you have your bed leveled all the way around, and you're going around all four corners multiple times, the next thing you want to do is load in some material. And we're going to need to do a preheat cycle before loading material into the print head. So first take your material and put it on the little holder on the top here, and cut your material at a 45-degree angle and feed it through the sensor switch. This switch tells the unit that you have material going through the print head. So it will stop the print if you run out of material. So be real careful to try to get the piece really straight as you're pushing it through here, or it gets bound up inside and you'll have to pull it back out. So the next thing we want to do is the preheat cycle. So to do preheat, you go to prepare on the menu. So push in for the menu, down to prepare, and I'm using PLA. So go to preheat PLA, push the button. And preheat PLA. Okay, so now we're waiting for this to get to temperature. And once we have it at temperature, what we're going to do is we're going to pull this down and feed it into the print head until just enough comes out that we see a small dab come out the bottom of the print head. So now that the PLA temperature has reached on the head, I'm going to take my filament and run it through the little hole here and push forward on the trigger so it can follow through. Push it down all the way till it feels like it stops. Give it a little bit of pressure, and we want to look down to see if we have anything coming out of the print head. And we do. We have a little material squeezing out of the print head. So now we know that our material is loaded and we are ready to start our first print. So the next thing you're going to want to do is install the software, which comes on the little USB drive with the little SD card plugged into it. Insert that into your computer. Go ahead and scan it before you open it with any of your, whatever your favorite utility is to scan for viruses and such. It's always good to be careful. Then go ahead and run the Creality Slicer installer, and you'll get a setup wizard, and you just go ahead and go forward with the install, and that will install the software we need to get started. And I'm just going to go with the default settings and get this installed. So now for my first print, what I'm going to do is I'm going to print the base part. There's 3 parts total of a Mr. Fusion. If anybody doesn't know what a Mr. Fusion is, just check out Back to the Future Part 1. And basically what you can do is you can go online and pick up some STL files pretty much anywhere online for just about anything you could ever think of. Somebody has created some STL files. You just import, scale. Make sure you scale everything the same way. I've scaled mine to 25%. And then I'm going to export to the SD card. And once I've done that, then I can take the file of export of the STL file, which is basically called the G-code file, and then we can go to the printer and start the first print. Okay, so now that I have my G-code for my base for Mr. Fusion, I'm going to plug the SD card into the side of the control unit for the CR10 printer. Looks like it goes in upside down, plugs in. Okay, now let's see if we can figure out how to find the file to print. There we go. Go to base.gcode, which is my Mr. Fusion base, and we're going to click on that. It says bed is heating, so I'm guessing that's all there is to do to it. So we'll check back in just a little bit, and this should be, once it heats up the print head and heats up the table, we should be able to see this guy moving and printing and laying down some material. So I set this to normal quality, and it looks like the base is a little jagged. We'll see how it comes out when it's all finished. But it has started the print. So it was going to be about 10 hours. So we'll check back every now and then to see how the print's going. So the print's coming along pretty nice. It's been running for 2 hours and 36 minutes. It's got quite a few hours left to go before the base of Mr. Fusion at scale to 25% is ready. So a little bit past 50% done. Mr. Fusion base is coming along pretty nicely. Few little jagged edges looks like need to be cleaned up. So the base of Mr. Fusion is finally completed. Looks like it needs a little bit of cleanup. I did it on normal setting. Maybe I should have did it on fine for this one, but it works out pretty good. And I thought I was going to have to use the little tool they gave us with the CR10,
to apply the material up, but I didn't, because look at this. It just moves on its own. It just came right loose. And it turned out quite well. So now it's time to start on the next piece. And of course I want to use some model paint and paint this. Well, it turned out pretty good for the first print, I should say. So one thing I need to do is it laid down a little bit of material underneath of the unit. And I'm just going to peel that off. First I thought this was part of the unit, but it's not. I guess the slicer program that generates the G-code put this down for a base for it to be printed on. So this is nice and smooth, unlike this little piece here. But this piece was nice because it allowed it to come right off the bed with no problem. So here's the actual piece, and the edges on this are pretty much perfect. So I'm very happy with the results here. I can't wait to figure out what 3D parts I'm going to print for some airplanes first. So many possibilities. I do need to print a cage for one of my biplanes, so this would be a perfect material for that. So I've brought in the chamber for the Mr. Fusion into the Creality slicer, and I scaled it to 25%, which is easy to do. You just click on the unit and put in 0.25. Now I've scaled it to 25% of the original size, and I rotated it by hitting the rotate button to get it to sit how it's sitting now. Then I saved it to the toolpath to SD option, which saved my chamber G-code. So now I can just plug this in the printer and start printing the top of the Mr. Fusion. So we'll see how this turns out. Alright, so we are ready to go. So the first thing I'm going to do is plug in the SD card. Click it in. There we go. So we want to go here. And print from TF. And I'm going to print the chamber. Okay, it's going to heat up the bed first. Then it's going to get the nozzle temperature up to 200 degrees. Then it will start printing. This is a little bit faster print supposedly, so we'll see how quick this turns out. Hopefully I've scaled everything just right and everything will fit together properly. We shall see.
So this is a pretty neat little view of the Mr. Fusion. 25% scale. So it didn't turn out too bad for the very first print. My painting job on it wasn't the greatest using model paint, but not too bad. So this is just something of interest. Another little video I'll be uploading soon, hopefully if it's successful, is a hovercraft that is a part of a scratch build I'm working on. And this is what the base looks like. Again, this will be in another video, but I just wanted you to see some of the really cool things you can actually do with a 3D printer with a scratch build. So this is another interesting item, also for the same hovercraft. It's just a little base that was 3D printed. I designed this actually in FreeCAD, and it's just a little mount to hold the steering mechanism and the servo, and bolts it down to the back of the airboat, the hovercraft. So this concludes our Creality 3D printer setup and unboxing, and shows a few neat little prints. If you enjoyed this, there may be a lot of other things on our channel that you may be interested in, so we ask go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you like. And if this was helpful, we ask that you like the video, and have a great day.